The road to Aspen in the late summer is a slow, beautiful climb into paradise. With every switchback, the noise and the heat of Denver fell away, replaced by the cool, pine-scented air of the Rockies and a sky so vast and blue it felt like a benediction. Beside me in the passenger seat, Jenna was humming along to the radio, her hand resting on my knee, a look of pure, uncomplicated joy on her face. This was her trip. A week-long escape to a secluded mountain cabin to celebrate her promotion. A reward for us both after a year of relentless work. For her as a kindergarten teacher, that meant a year of managing 30 small, chaotic forces of nature. For me, a cybersecurity consultant, it meant a year of living in the digital shadows, thinking like a thief in order to stop them. For the first time in months, I felt my own internal firewall begin to power down. The cabin, when we found it at the end of a long, private gravel road, was a masterpiece. It was called the Airy, and it was perched on a hillside with a breathtaking panoramic view of the valley below. It was built of dark, fragrant cedar and river stone, a perfect blend of rustic charm and modern luxury. A wide deck had a hot tub steaming gently in the cool mountain air. It was a postcard. It was perfect. The owner, a man named Arthur Abernathy, was waiting for us on the porch. It was a man in his 60s with a warm, weathered face, a friendly shock of white hair, and a handshake as solid as the mountains around us. He was the very picture of the trustworthy, folksy local. "Welcome, welcome," he boomed, his voice full of a genuine seeming warmth. "Glad you found the place all right. The GPS can be a little tricky up here." He gave us a tour proudly, pointing out the heated slate floors, the gourmet kitchen, the state-of-the-art smart home system. "Everything's controlled by this tablet here," he explained. "Lights, music, temperature. You just let me know if you have any trouble. At all. I'm just up the hill in the main house if you need anything. No, I'll leave you two to get settled. You enjoy this mountain air?" He was charming. He was perfect. The cabin was perfect. The day, Wednesday, August 6, 2025, was perfect. And that right there should have been my first warning. In my line of work, perfection is an illusion. A vulnerability waiting to be exploited. For the first few hours, I let myself believe the illusion. Jenna and I unpacked. We opened a bottle of wine and sat on the deck, wrapped in blankets, watching the sun begin to set, painting the peaks in strokes of orange and purple. The silence was profound, broken only by the whisper of the wind through the aspen trees. Jenna leaned her head on my shoulder, a look of blissful peace on her face. "I could stay here forever." She sighed. "Me too," I said. And for a moment, I almost meant it. But the ghost of my profession is not easily exorcised. While Jenna took a bath, I connected my laptop to the cabin's Wi-Fi network. It was a habit, a reflex. I always checked the network. The password Abernathy had given us was Aspenori123. It was a password that was just complex enough to make a layman feel secure and just simple enough to make a professional like me deeply, deeply suspicious. I ran a simple network scan. My professional paranoia, the finely honed instinct that had kept my clients' billion-dollar secrets safe, began to itch. The bandwidth allocation was strange. For a simple guest network, the upstream data flow's amount of information being sent from the cabin to the internet was unusually, inexplicably high. Far too high for a couple of phones and a laptop. Something in this perfect, cozy cabin was uploading a lot of data. Jenna came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a fluffy white robe, her face flushed from the heat of the bath. "What are you doing, you big nerd?" she asked, playfully ruffling. "My hair. I thought we had a strict no-work policy this week." "Just checking the connection," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "It's a little chatty." She rolled her eyes. "Liam, you are the only man on earth who goes on a romantic getaway and immediately runs a diagnostic on the Wi-Fi. Dad always said you have to check the nets before you go to sea." I said, the old family saying from my childhood in the Philippines bubbling up. It was my Lolo saying. Really, a piece of wisdom passed down from the fishing villages of Petsgate. FTP villages of Sabellum, a tiny unseen hole is all it takes to lose the whole catch. Well, we are not at sea, and you are not a fisherman. Jenna laughed, pulling me to my feet. You are a vacationer. And you are officially off duty. I tried. I really did. I put the laptop away. I made dinner with Jenna. We drank wine by the massive stone fireplace. We laughed. We tried to live in the perfect romantic illusion. But the itch of my professional paranoia was still there. The quiet, insistent whisper in the back of my mind. It's that upstream data flow. It's not right. What is this network hiding? That night, after Jenna had fallen into a deep, peaceful sleep, in the big, comfortable bed, I finally gave in. I couldn't rest. I had to check the nets, slipped out of bed and retrieved my work bag from the car. It was my travel kit, a small, innocuous-looking case that contained the tools of my trade. It held a small RF radio frequency detector, a thermal imaging lens for my phone, and a set of fiber optic inspection cameras. To anyone else, it was a bag of spy gadgets. To me, it was a flashlight and a set of keys, tools to look in the dark, places where secrets hide. I started in the living room. I turned off all the lights, plunging the cabin into a deep, moonlit silence. I turned on the RF detector. The device was simple. It listened for any wireless signals being broadcast in the room. I swept the room, my movements slow and methodical. The television, the smart speaker, the Wi-Fi router itself. It's all expected signals. It's nothing out of the ordinary. I did the same in the kitchen. Nothing. I was beginning to feel foolish. Kay, a paranoid workaholic ruining his own vacation. Then I went into the bathroom. I swept the walls, the ceiling. The detector remained silent. But as I passed the mirror over the vanity, it let out a soft, almost imperceptible chirp. A signal, faint. But there. Swept it again. Chirp. It was coming from behind the mirror. My blood went cold. With trembling hands, I lifted the heavy mirror off its hook. And there, nestled in a small hole drilled into the wall, was a tiny black box with a pinhole lens aimed directly at the shower. It was a hardwired IP camera, its data cable snaking back into the wall. The air left my lungs in a single silent rush. The feeling was not one of professional discovery. It was a sickening, visceral wave of pure violation. Jenna had just taken a bath in this room. My mind flashed with the image of her, so happy and relaxed, completely unaware that she was being watched, being recorded. The rage that began to build in me was something I had not felt in a very long time. It was a cold, quiet, and murderous rage. I knew there would be more. This was not the work of an amateur. This was a system. I went into the bedroom. It's the room where Jenna was sleeping. So peacefully, so vulnerably. I stood in the center of the darkroom, holding the RF detector, and it began to scream, a loud, steady, high-pitched squeal. The signal was strong, and it was coming from directly above the bed. I looked up. There was a standard white circular smoke detector on the ceiling. But as I looked closer, I saw it. A tiny, almost invisible black dot in the center of the plastic grating. A dot that did not belong on a smoke detector. A dot that was, in fact, a wide-angle, high-definition camera lens. It was aimed directly at our bed. I felt a profound animalistic urge to smash it, to rip it from the ceiling and grind it into dust under my heel. But my training, my discipline, took over. Smashing it would alert him, and a simple police report was not enough. A man who does this, who builds a secret surveillance network in his own properties, is not a simple pervert. He is a predator. And a simple charge of illegal surveillance might just be a slap on the wrist for a man with enough money to hire good lawyers. No, I needed more. I needed his whole world. I stood on the bed, my heart a block of ice in my chest, and I carefully twisted the cover of the smoke detector off. My blood ran even colder. It wasn't just a camera. It was a high-end network device with its own microphone and internal storage. It was expertly installed. This was professional-grade illegal surveillance. My hands were shaking now, not with fear, but with a pure, unadulterated fury. I thought of every moment since we had arrived. Our embrace on the porch, the wine we drank by the fire, the way Jenna had laughed as she got ready for bed. He had been watching it all, recording it all. A sick, silent, invisible guest in our most intimate private moments. I carefully replaced the cover of the smoke detector. I went back to the bathroom and rehung the mirror, put my tools back in their case. The illusion of the perfect, romantic getaway was shattered. I now knew what this place really was. It was a hunting blind. It was a television studio. We were the unwilling stars of a sick, secret show. I walked back into the bedroom and looked at Jenna, sleeping so peacefully, so unaware of the violation that was hanging in the air just a few feet above her head. The sight of her, so trusting and so vulnerable, solidified my resolve. My quiet, professional rage crystallized into a singular, cold purpose. The police would get their turn, but first I was going to get mine. He had used his technology to invade my world. Now I was going to use my expertise to burn his to the ground. The hunt was on. I did not sleep. I sat in a hard wooden chair in the corner of the living room, a silent, furious sentinel in the dark, watching the slow, inexorable crawl of the moon across the star-dusted Colorado sky. Every creak of the cabin, every rustle of the wind in the pines was the sound of the enemy. The house was no longer a sanctuary. It was a cage, was a television studio. And the man up the hill was the executive producer of our own private horror film. My rage was a cold, quiet, and perfectly still thing, a frozen lake of pure, homicidal fury. When the first pale light of morning filtered through the windows on Wednesday, August 6th, Jenna woke up. She saw me sitting in the chair, my face grim in the half-light, and she knew instantly that something was terribly wrong, Liam. She said, her voice full of a sleepy concern that twisted a knife in my gut. "What's wrong? You've been up all night." I didn't know how to tell her. How do you tell the person you love that the beautiful, safe world you have built together has been breached, that your most intimate moments have been stolen and cataloged by a stranger? There is no gentle way to say it, so I just told her the truth. "There are cameras in this house, Jenna," I said, my voice a low, flat monotone. "In the bathroom, in the bedroom. It's been watching us. He's been recording us." Her reaction was a slow, dawning wave of horror. First, confusion. Then a denial that was so fierce it was almost a plea. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, you're wrong. You're just being paranoid. It's your work. It's gotten into your head." "I'm not paranoid," I said, and my voice was harder than I intended. I went to my bag and pulled out my phone. I showed her the picture I had taken of the inside of the smoke detector. The tiny, black, malevolent lens staring out like the eye of a spider. She looked at the photo and the denial shattered, replaced by a profound, soul-deep violation. Her hand flew to her mouth, her face went pale, and she made a small, wounded sound. I saw her mind replaying the last 24 hours just as mine had. Our arrival. Our dinner by the fire. Our night in the bed just a few feet from where I lie. Was now standing, every moment tainted. Every memory stolen. Her fear, when it came, was a flash flood. "Oh my God," she said, her voice trembling. "Oh my God, Liam, we have to get out of here, now." She was already grabbing her clothes, her movements frantic, panicked. "We'll pack the car, we'll leave, and we'll call the police from the road." It was the sane, rational, normal human reaction. And I knew I could not let her do it. "No," I said. She stopped, a shirt clutched in her hand, and stared at me. "What do you mean, no, Liam? That sick bastard is watching us right now. We have to leave. If we leave now, he wins," I said, my voice a low, intense hum. "The moment our car goes down that driveway, he'll know we're on to him. And whatever he's recording on, Whatever server he's using, it will be wiped clean in seconds. We'll go to the police, and it will be our word against his. The word of two tourists against Arthur Abernathy, the charming, respected local business owner. He'll call us liars. He'll say we're trying to extort him. And the evidence, it will be gone. I don't care. She cried, her eyes full of a terrified, desperate anger. I don't care about the evidence. I care about us. I want to be safe. I want to be home. And you think we'll be safe at home? I shot back, my own control beginning to fray. You think a man who does this just stops? He has videos of us, Jenna, intimate videos. What do you think he's going to do with them? You think he's just going to delete them out of the goodness of his heart? Or is he going to keep them? Is he going to post them online? Is he going to use them to blackmail us for the rest of our lives? The color drained from her face. She hadn't thought that far ahead. She was in flight mode. I was in fight mode. We can't just run, I said, my voice softening now. That's what he expects. That's what all his other victims probably did. I walked over to her and took her hands. They were ice cold. My father, I began, searching for the words he used to tell me stories about his own father. My Lolo in Sibilum. He was a farmer. And one year, a clever snake was getting into his chicken coop at night and stealing the eggs. Every morning, another egg was gone. Jenna stared at me, her expression lost. What are you talking about, Liam? What does this have to do with anything? Just listen, I pleaded. My Lolo could have just built a bigger fence, scared the snake off for a few days. He knew the snake would just find another way in, would always be a threat. So he didn't just try to scare the snake. He spent a week building a trap, a clever, patient trap. He caught the snake and he took it to the center of the village and he showed everyone what it was. He didn't just solve the problem for a day, he eliminated the threat forever. I looked her directly in the eye, my grip on her hands tightening. Abernathy is the snake, and we are in his chicken coop. You don't just scare a snake, Jenna. You have to cut off its head. How? She whispered, her voice full of a fearful awe. What are you going to do? I am going to do what I do for a living, I said, a cold, hard certainty. In my voice, he has built a network to watch us. Tonight, I am going to use that same network to watch him. I am going to get into his system, and I am going to find every single one of his secrets. I am going to find the proof we need to. Make sure he spends the rest of his life in a cage. But I need you. I need you to be strong. We have to stay one more day. We have to act completely normal. Can you do that? She looked at me, her mind at war with itself. Every instinct was telling her to run. But she saw the look in my eyes, the absolute, unshakable resolve. And she made a choice. She chose to. Trust me. Okay, she nodded, her own fear being replaced by a flicker of my own cold fury. Okay, Liam, one more day. Let's go catch a snake. The day that followed was the longest, most surreal performance of our lives. We had to pretend to be the happy, carefree couple on vacation, knowing that a pervert's eye was on us at all times. Every word, every gesture was a lie. We went. For a hike, our conversation a stilted, bizarre pantomime of normalcy. The trees are so beautiful here, she'd say. Her voice a little too bright. Yes, so much. Nature, I'd reply, my mind a million miles away, mapping out the architecture of Abernathy's network. We made lunch. We sat on the deck. We even in the most skin-crawling 30 minutes of my life got in the hot tub. We had two. To do anything out of the ordinary would be to tip him off. We kept the conversation light, we laughed, we splashed each other. All while a hidden camera I had located behind a loose knot in the cedar siding was broadcasting our every move to the monster on the hill. The psychological strain was immense. It was an act of sustained, disciplined violation. I could feel Jenna's resolve beginning to fray. By the time evening fell, she was a wreck of frayed nerves. I'm going to bed, she announced after dinner, her voice a flat, exhausted monotone. I'm just done. Good, I said. Get some sleep. I'll be up for a little while, she. knew what that meant. The performance was over. The hunt was about to begin. Scu went into the bedroom, the scene of the crime, and closed the door. I waited an hour until the silence in the cabin was absolute. Then I went to work. My office was the rustic wooden kitchen table. My tools were my laptop, a small satellite internet dongle to hide my digital footprint, and a thermos of black coffee. The game was on. My first step was to get inside his network. I already had the Wi-Fi password, but I needed the keys to the kingdom. I needed administrator access to his router. I opened a terminal window on my laptop, the familiar black screen and green text, a comforting sight. I ran a port scan. Nothing obvious. He was smart enough to close the common doors, but he wasn't smart enough for me. I found the router's manufacturer and model number from the network diagnostics. A quick search on the dark web forums I frequent brought up a known firmware vulnerability, a backdoor, a tiny unseen hole in his phishing net. It took me less than 10 minutes to write a small script to exploit it. I hit enter, and a single beautiful line of text appeared on my screen. Root access granted. I was in now that I was. Inside the main gate, I had to map the fortress. I ran a deep network scan from inside the router itself, and I saw everything. A web of connected devices all communicating with each other. I saw Jenna's phone, my laptop, the smart TV, and then I saw them. A series of devices all labeled CAMBR, CAMLR, CAMDEC, the cameras. They were all feeding their data to a single powerful server on the same network, a device labeled Abernathy's. His network attached storage. The treasure chest. It was located, as I suspected, at a different IP address, one that was physically located in the main house. Up the hill, he had built a sophisticated secret surveillance network, but he had made one critical amateur mistake. He had linked his guest house network to his own personal home network, probably for convenience. It was a mistake born of arrogance. It was going to be his downfall. The server was my final target. It was protected by its own firewalls, its own passwords. I was already inside the walls. I had the home field advantage. I spent the next 2 hours probing its defenses, looking for a weakness, and I found one. An outdated version of media. Server software, a program he was likely using to watch his sick collection, had a known security flaw. I began to write the code. My fingers flew across the keyboard. This was my art form. This was my music, a silent, deadly symphony of logic. I was not a musician. I was not a fisherman. I was a digital assassin. And I was about to deliver the killing blow. I finished the exploit script. It was a thing of beauty, elegant and lethal. I took a deep breath. I hit the enter key. For a moment, nothing. And then a new window opened on my screen. It was a file directory. Folders and folders stretching back for years. Light 2025. Cabin June 2025. Lodgema 2025. It was all there. A library of stolen lives. A museum of his crimes. And at the top of the screen, the prompt had changed. It no longer showed me as a guest. It showed me as the master. Root at Abernathy's. Hashtag I had full, unrestricted, absolute control of his entire digital world. I owned his cameras. I owned his secrets. I owned him. The snake was not just caught. I was inside its head. And now I was going to make it devour itself. The night was a long, deep dive into the abyss of another man's soul. And the abyss was darker and more putrid than I could have ever imagined. With root access to Abernathy's server, I was a ghost in his digital machine, a silent god in his private universe of stolen moments. I sat at the rustic kitchen table of his own bugged cabin, the faint, cheerful scent of pine from a decorative wreath mocking the grim work at hand. My laptop was my window, and through it I saw a vista of pure, calculated evil. My first stop was the archive of recordings. The file structure was meticulous, obsessive. There were folders for each of his 3 rental properties, organized by year, then month, then by the name of the renter. Arikabinja Light, 2025. Creekside Lodge, June 2025. On and on it went. A library of stolen lives stretching back nearly a decade. My own folder was there. Arikabinaga's 2025 ants. My stomach churned. I clicked on it. There were dozens of small video files, each time-stamped. Living room-2205-08-06-15H30M.MP4. That was us. Arriving him complimenting the view. Deck-225-08-06-18HOOM.MP4. That was us. Drinking wine as the sun set. I felt a surge of violent, nauseating rage. He had taken these beautiful, perfect moments and twisted them into something dirty, something non-consensual. I saw a file labeled bedroom-225-08-06-23HOOM.MP4. I deleted it without watching. A small, futile act of reclaiming our privacy. I forced myself to look at the others. I had to understand the scope of his sickness. I opened a random folder from a few months prior. A young couple celebrating their anniversary. I watched a few seconds of them laughing, dancing in the living room, completely unaware. I felt like a monster myself, a voyeur to their stolen privacy. But I had to know. I opened another folder. A family with 2 small children playing a board game by the fire. He recorded everyone. Young, old, families, lovers. It was a vast, indiscriminate harvest of other people's lives. This was not the work of a simple pervert. This was the work of a collector. A man obsessed with possessing the moments that belonged to others. For an hour, I waded through this digital swamp of stolen joy, stolen intimacy, stolen arguments, stolen grief. And with every file I saw, my resolve hardened. This man did not deserve a slap on the wrist. He deserved to be erased. As I navigated the server's file structure, a single password-protected folder caught my eye. It was different from the others. The video archives were meticulously labeled. This one had an innocuous, boring name. HHR_finances_archive. Harrington House Rentals Finances. It was designed to be overlooked. A ghost in a graveyard of ghosts. I tried to access it. A simple password prompt appeared. This was the inner sanctum. I knew with a deep primal certainty that this was where the real secrets were kept. I ran. A simple dictionary attack. A program that tries thousands of common passwords a minute. Nothing. I tried personal information I could glean from his public profiles. His wife's name, his dog's name, his birthday. Nothing. The password was strong. The encryption was professional grade. This was where the real treasure was buried. Breaking it would take time. I initiated a more powerful program. Brute force attack that would systematically try every possible combination of letters and numbers. It was the digital equivalent of trying every key in the world on a single stubborn lock. The estimated time to crack the password was over 6 hours. I set the program to run. The fan on my laptop worried to life as the processor began its long, arduous task. The silence of the cabin pressed in on me. I was a fisherman who had set his net. All I could do now was wait. Sometime around 3 a.m., a floorboard creaked behind me. I turned. It was Jenna, her face pale in the glow of my laptop screen. A blanket wrapped around her shoulders. I couldn't sleep, she whispered. I keep seeing that little black lens in my head. I know, I said softly. She came and stood behind me, looking at the screen. The decryption program was just a scrolling wall of meaningless text. What is that? She asked. It's a locked door, I said, and I'm picking the lock. I think everything we need to destroy him is behind that door. We sat there in silence for a long time. Two unwilling co-conspirators in the dead of the Colorado night. "What he did to us, Liam," she said finally, her voice full of a quiet steel rage that I had never heard from her before. "It's unforgivable. I want him to pay. I really do. But I'm scared. This man, he's rich. He's powerful. What if he comes after us?" "He won't," I said, my voice full of a confidence I didn't entirely feel. "Because we're not going to give him the chance. We're not going to fight him on his terms. We're going to fight him on mine, in the dark, where he'll never see it coming." I thought of my family, of the stories I had been raised on. I thought of the values they had instilled in me, the ones that had come all the way from that small town in the Philippines. "My mother always says that you can't fight a bully with just your fists," I told her, the memory a sudden welcome. "Anchor, because a bully is always stronger than you, or he wouldn't be a bully. You have to be smarter. You have to understand his world so you can use it against him. You have to fight for yourself, but also for the people he will bully after you if you do nothing." It was the principle of Pakakapapwa Dao, shared humanity, a responsibility to the community. My personal desire for revenge was transforming into something else, a moral crusade. This wasn't just about me and Jenna anymore. It was about all the other names in all the other folders. Just then, a small cheerful ding came from my laptop. The decryption was complete. New window was open on my screen, revealing the contents of the locked folder. Jenna squeezed my shoulder. "Go on," she whispered. "Cut the head off the snake." The video archive had been an abyss. This was the 9th circle of hell. It was not just a collection of videos. It was a meticulously organized blackmail operation for dozens of victims. Stretching back for years, there was a dedicated folder. And inside each folder, the same sickening template. First, the video. Usually something professionally damaging or personally humiliating. It's powerful. CEO, a married man with a woman who was not his wife. A closeted local politician on vacation with his secret lover. A famous actress in the throes of a private emotional breakdown. Second, a dossier. A full workup on the victim. Their net worth, their family connections, their business vulnerabilities. Abernathy had done his homework. He knew exactly where to apply the pressure. Third, the correspondence. Copies of the blackmail emails sent from the same kind of anonymous, encrypted address I was now using. The language was cold, corporate, and utterly ruthless. "I am in possession of a digital asset that would be of great interest to your wife and your board of directors. A payment of $500,000 in Bitcoin will ensure this asset remains private." And finally, the proof of payment. A record of the cryptocurrency transaction. He was not just a pervert. He was a predator of the highest order. He was a one-man criminal enterprise, using his charming, folksy persona as the perfect cover. I spent the next 2 hours wading through the wreckage of the lives he had destroyed. A Denver tech CEO, a man with a wife and kids, who had been secretly recorded with a male escort. He had paid the blackmail. A year later, his company was acquired in a hostile takeover. And I found a separate file indicating Abernathy had used the information to short the stock, profiting from the man's ruin twice over. A California state senator, a woman with a perfect family values voting record, recorded in a heated, tearful argument with her teenage daughter, an argument that touched on the daughter's secret abortion. Abernathy had leaked the audio to a political rival, destroying her career and her relationship with her child. On and on it went. A gallery of human misery, all curated by the friendly, grandfatherly man up the hill. He had not just been watching them, he had been using their most private, most vulnerable moments to systematically ruin their lives for his own profit and amusement. The scale of the cruelty, the sheer sociopathic evil of it, was breathtaking. I had everything. I had enough evidence to send Arthur Abernathy to a federal prison for the rest of his natural life. Blackmail, extortion, wire fraud, dozens of felonies. I sat back in my chair, the first light of dawn beginning to creep over the mountains. Investigation was over. I had the truth. But now a new, more dangerous phase had to begin. Simply handing this evidence over to the local police felt risky. Abernathy was a pillar of this community. He had money. He had lawyers. He could bog this down in court for years. He could claim I hacked him, that I fabricated the evidence. I needed to do more than just give them the truth. I needed to create a situation where they had no choice but to act immediately and with overwhelming force. I needed to create a scenario where the evidence could not be buried, could not be disputed. He thought his network was his weapon, but it was about to become his cage. He had built his own private panopticon, but he had forgotten one crucial detail. A fortress with a secret back door is not a fortress at all. It's a tomb. I began to formulate a new plan. A plan not just to expose him, but to use his own methods, his own world of secrets and lies against him. The hunt was over. The trap was about to be set. Dawn over the Rockies is a quiet, brutal kind of beautiful. The rising sun sets the jagged peaks on fire, a cold, majestic spectacle that makes you feel very small. I sat at the kitchen table of the surveillance cabin, the first light of Thursday, August 7th, streaming through the window, and I felt smaller than I ever had in my life. I had spent the entire night wading through the digital filth of Arthur Abernathy's soul, and I felt tainted, dirty. On my laptop screen was a curated collection of his greatest hits, the blackmail files of a dozen innocent people whose lives he had systematically destroyed. I had the evidence. I had the truth. Jenna found me there, a fresh cup of coffee in her hands. She had dark circles under her eyes. Neither of us had slept. "Find what you were looking for?" she asked, her voice a low, tired murmur. "That and more," I said grimly. "Not just a pervert, Jenna. He's a monster. An extortionist. He's been ruining lives for years from this cozy little cabin." She looked at the files on my screen, her face pale. "So that's it then," she said, her voice full of a desperate hope. "You have it? We can just send that to the police, right? Anonymously. And then we can leave. We can just go home." It was the sane, logical choice, the self-preservation instinct. And I knew with a terrible, cold certainty that it was not enough. "And what happens then?" I asked, my voice as weary as I felt. "We send a file from an anonymous source. Abernathy, a respected local millionaire, hires a team of $500 an hour. Lawyers, they'll claim the evidence was planted. They'll claim he was hacked by a disgruntled Gestas. They'll create enough reasonable doubt to turn a mountain of evidence into a molehill. He might get a slap on the wrist. He might serve a year or two. And the whole time his other victims, the people in these files, will have their lives dragged through a public, humiliating trial. He'll make them the criminals." I looked at her, my heart aching for the fear in her eyes. Running away isn't enough. A simple police report isn't enough. For a man like this, a man with this much power, the system isn't designed for justice. It's designed for deals. We can't just hand them the evidence. We have to create a situation where they have no choice but to use it. Situation so public, so undeniable that no lawyer, no matter how expensive, can spin their way out of it. "How, Liam?" she asked, her voice full of despair. "How do we do that without getting ourselves destroyed in the process?" My mind went back, as it so often did when I was lost, to the stories of my family. Of my Lola, my grandmother, and the small village of Sibilum she came from. She had told me once about a fire that had swept through the village market when she was a little girl. No one knew how to stop it. Everyone was running, saving their own things. But then, the village elder had started a bucket brigade. Not to save one person's stall, but to save the whole market. He had shouted a single word: Bayanahan. It's a word that doesn't have a perfect English translation. It means something like communal unity, spirit of shared work for the good of the whole village. You don't just protect your own house. You help your neighbor protect his, because his house is your house. Safety is your safety. I have to do this. Jenna, I said, the memory giving me a new, profound clarity. Not just for us. For them, I pointed to the files on my screen. For the politician in California. For the CEO in Denver. For all the other people he has hurt who were too scared, too alone to fight back. Abernathy didn't just violate our privacy. He violated a community of strangers. And right now, I'm the only one who can call the Bucket Brigade. My resolve was absolute. My revenge would not just be personal. It would be a community service. Now, I just had to build the trap. For the next 3 hours, my fingers flew across the keyboard. I was no longer just a cybersecurity expert. I was a strategist, a storyteller, a ghost in the machine preparing a grand final act of theater. My plan had 3 parts. First, the bait. I selected the 3 most damning blackmail files: the state senator, the tech CEO, and a famous recently divorced actor. I packaged the video clips and the blackmail letters into a single, heavily encrypted file. This was the prize. Second, the delivery system. I had to create a narrative, a reason for the police to act with overwhelming force. I would not be Liam Vance, the violated tourist. I would become a new character, a rival blackmailer, a ruthless criminal who had hacked Abernathy and was now threatening to release his entire collection to the world. I created a new, untraceable email address through a series of offshore servers. I downloaded a sophisticated voice scrambling software. I became a monster to catch a monster. Third, and most crucial, was the trap itself. I couldn't just tell the police the evidence was on Abernathy's server. They would need a warrant, a process that could take days. By then, he could have wiped everything. I needed to give them a legal, undeniable reason to raid his house now. So, using the root access I still had to his network, I performed a final, delicate piece of surgery. I created a fake vulnerability in his own home security system. I opened a single, obscure network port and created a log file that made it look like it had been repeatedly accessed by an unauthorized outside user. I was creating a digital crime scene. I was planting my ghost's footprints all over his house. I was giving the police a backdoor and making them think it was the criminals. At precisely 10 a.m. Our official checkout time, I put the plan into motion. Jenna and I began to pack our bags, making the normal, cheerful sounds of a couple, ending their vacation. But as I folded our clothes, I had another laptop open on the floor, hidden from the view of any of the cameras. First, the email. I sent it from my anonymous account to a specific list of recipients: the head of the Colorado State Police Cybercrimes Unit, the Aspen Police Chief, and Jessica Chang, the Wall Street Journal reporter who had exposed the Prescott scandal just weeks before. Subject: the Abernathy collection going public in 24 HORS. To whom it may concern. Okay. Arthur Abernathy of Aspen has a collection, a vast private archive of illicitly recorded videos from his rental properties. For years, he has used these recordings to blackmail some of the most powerful people in this country. I have acquired that collection, and I find it to be a seller's market. This is a notification. My attempts to negotiate a private settlement with Mr. Abernathy have failed. Therefore, in 24 hours, the entire collection will be released to the public. The videos, the blackmail letters, the names of his victims. Everything. The careers and lives of half the people who have vacationed in this town are on his server. The clock is ticking. The email was the spark. It created a motive for the police to act, not just to investigate a crime, but to prevent a massive, impending public scandal involving dozens of prominent victims. Next, the phone call. I used a burner app and the voice modulator to call the state police anonymous tip line. My voice came out as a low, gravelly, and deeply menacing rasp. "I've got a tip for you about the Abernathy situation," I rasped. "The one you're about to get an email about." I'm the competition, and I'm telling you, the man is a fool. His home network is as leaky as a sieve. I've been inside it for a week. He's running a vulnerable media server on an open port. If you want to catch him, if you want to seize the evidence before he can wipe it, you need a warrant. Now, and you need to tell your tech guys to check the access logs for port 455. That's the back door. You'll find my fingerprints all over it. I had given them everything. A motive to act immediately. A clear and present threat. And a legal, justifiable reason to get a warrant. The digital evidence of an ongoing network intrusion, a crime. In progress, my fingerprints. The fingerprints of a ghost I had invented. I hung up. I closed the laptop. I took a deep breath. The trap was set. The dominoes were lined up. All I had to do was push the first one. Ready to go? I asked Jenna. My voice a perfect imitation of a happy, relaxed vacationer. She nodded, her face pale, but her eyes full of a new, hard strength. Ready? We packed the last of our things into the car. I walked up to the main house to return the key. Arthur Abernathy was on his porch, watering his petunias, a picture of grandfatherly innocence. Leaving so soon? He asked, his smile as warm and friendly as ever. Have to get back to the real world, I said, smiling back. Thank you for everything, Mr. Abernathy. It was a perfect getaway. You come back any time, son, he said, clapping me on the shoulder. The casual, paternalistic touch made my skin crawl. I walked back to my car. As I got in, I saw him through the rearview mirror, still standing there, still smiling. He had no idea what was coming. He had no idea that the polite, quiet young man he had been secretly recording for the past 2 days was about to bring his entire world crashing down around him. I put the car in drive and pulled away, slowly, down the long gravel road. I did not speed. I did not look back. We were just another happy couple, heading home from a perfect vacation in the mountains. We were halfway to town when the first police car, its lights flashing but siren off, sped past us, heading up the mountain. Then another, and another. We didn't drive far. About a mile down the winding mountain road, there was a scenic overlook. A small patch of gravel carved out of the cliffside that offered a perfect panoramic view of the valley. Of his valley. I pulled the car over, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. What are you doing? Jenna asked, her voice a tense whisper. The work is done, I said. My eyes fixed on the distant chalet that was Arthur Abernathy's home. Now we watched the results get published. We sat in the car, the engine off, the silence of the mountains, a stark contrast to the frantic pounding of my own heart. For 10 minutes, nothing. The perfect picturesque scene was unchanged. I began to feel a cold knot of dread in my stomach. What if I had been too clever? What if I had missed a detail, a variable? What if he had a fail-safe, a way to wipe the servers remotely? And then I saw it. A single dark speck on the winding road below. Us, moving fast. Then another, and another. A convoy of 3 black SUVs, their official government license plates glinting in the morning sun. They were followed by 2 marked Colorado State Police cruisers. They weren't using their sirens. A silent, predatory procession. They turned up Abernathy's private road and disappeared into the trees. Oh my God. Liam, Jenna breathed, her hand finding mine. We watched. The distance was too great to see details, but we saw the shapes of men clad in dark tactical gear spilling out of the vehicles. The FBI. They had taken my tip seriously. They had brought the thunder. For a long time, nothing happened. And then we saw him, Arthur Abernathy. Even from a mile away, his confusion was palpable. He was led out of his front door, his hands cuffed behind his back. The charming, folksy host, the grandfatherly pillar of the community, was being arrested on his perfectly manicured lawn. He was not wearing his friendly smile. He just looked small and old and utterly bewildered. The main event came a few minutes later. 2 agents emerged from the house, carrying a large, heavy server rack between them. My heart gave a triumphant leap. It was the NAS, my treasure chest, the library of his crimes. They loaded it carefully into the back of one of the SUVs. They had it. They had it all. The net, I thought, remembering my Lolo's wisdom, was full. And the catch was secure. We drove back to Denver in a state of quiet, suspended disbelief. The rest of the story unfolded on television screens and news sites over the next few days. My carefully orchestrated anonymous tip had worked perfectly. The imminent threat of the rival blackmailer. Releasing the tapes had given the authorities the emergency justification they needed to secure a no-knock warrant and seize everything before Abernathy could react. The story exploded. It was national news. The Aspen Spider, respected local philanthropist Arthur Abernathy, arrested in massive blackmail and voyeurism ring. The details that emerged were even more horrifying than what I had seen on his server. The police press conference was a grim affair. The district attorney, a stern-faced woman with eyes of steel, laid out the scope of his crimes. Over 200 victims. A decade of recordings. At least a dozen documented cases of high-stakes blackmail. This was an operation of breathtaking arrogance and depravity. The DA said, her voice full of a cold fury. This man used the natural beauty of our state as a lure, and the privacy of his homes as a weapon, to prey on the innocent. He was a monster hiding in plain sight. A reporter asked the question I was waiting for. What was the break in the case? How was he finally caught? The DA looked directly into the camera. The investigation was initiated thanks to a detailed and credible tip from an anonymous source. This source provided information that was instrumental in securing the warrant and preserving the evidence before it could be destroyed. To whoever you are, she said, and it felt like she was speaking directly to me. You have our gratitude. You have brought justice to dozens of victims who were too afraid to speak for themselves. Hearing those words, I felt a profound sense of something I had not expected. Not just the satisfaction of revenge, but a deep, quiet pride. I had done more than just save myself. I had honored the principle my family had taught me. I had performed an act of Bianahan. I had protected the village from the monster on the hill. The best part was, the evidence now legally in the possession of the authorities, Abernathy's other victims began to come forward. The state senator from California, the tech CEO from Denver. One by one, they added their stories to the chorus, their testimony building an ironclad, inescapable case. Abernathy's high-priced lawyers were powerless. There were no deals to be made. There was no escape. He was going to spend the rest of his life in a federal prison. A few weeks later, Jenna and I were sitting on the couch in our own apartment in Denver. It was a place with no hidden cameras, no secrets. It was safe. The news cycle had moved on. Abernathy was just another disgraced villain awaiting trial. But the echo of what had happened, of the violation, still lingered. Do you think? Jenna asked, her voice quiet. You'll ever be able to stay in a hotel room again without taking apart the smoke detectors? I sighed. Honestly, probably not. The experience had changed me. It had rewired my brain. The world felt less safe. The quiet paranoia that had been my professional tool had now bled into my personal life. The soldier was having a hard time standing down. We need to heal from this, Liam, she said, taking my hand. Really heal? We need a do-over, a real vacation. No laptops, no RF detectors, no monsters on the hill. Where? I asked. She smiled. A real, beautiful, hopeful smile. You've been telling me stories about it for years. About the beaches, about your Lola's cooking, about the place where your family's heart is. She squeezed my hand. Take me to Cybulum. And in that moment, I knew she was right. Our perfect getaway had been a lie, a beautiful stage for an ugly crime. We needed to find a place that was not just beautiful, but truly safe. Place where the warmth was real. A place where the welcome was not a deception. My revenge was complete. I had brought a monster to justice, but the final act of my own story was not about him. It was about me. It was about finding my way back to the person I was before all this. It was about going home. The final scene of my story does not take place in a cold, sterile courtroom as a judge reads a guilty verdict. It does not take place in a press conference where my name is praised. It takes place 3 months later on a stretch of warm white sand in Antique. The sun is setting over the Sulu Sea, a spectacle of such impossible, heart-aching beauty that it feels like a prayer. The air smells of salt and wood smoke and my mother's chicken adobo, cooking in the kitchen of my family's old, beautiful, open-windowed house. Jenna is beside me, and we are watching a group of local kids play soccer on the beach. Their laughter is a bright, beautiful sound that carries on the warm breeze. She leans her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in a long time, the world feels completely, utterly, and truly safe. My phone buzzes. It's a news alert, eh? Headline from a Colorado paper. Arthur Abernathy sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. I read the headline. I look at the blue of the sea. I listen to the laughter of the children. I feel the warmth of the woman I love beside me. And then I turn the phone off and I put it away. The story of the monster was over. It was time to start my own. My world now is a cube of painted cinder blocks. It measures 6 feet by 9. There is a steel toilet, a thin mattress on a concrete slab, and a single high window of frosted, shatterproof glass that shows me nothing of the Colorado sky. The privacy I so cherished, the quiet, godlike solitude from which I observed the messy, beautiful lives of others, is gone. Here I am the one who is watched. The guards watch me from the hallway. Camera, a real, ugly, obvious one, watches me. From the corner of the ceiling, it is a crude, artless, and deeply insulting parody of my own work. They call me Federal Inmate Number 77A429. Before that, they called me the Aspen Spider in the headlines, a lurid, unimaginative moniker. But I know who I am. I am a collector. I was a connoisseur of the human condition. My collection was not of stamps or coins or art, which are dead things. My collection was of secrets, of moments, of the private, unfiltered truths that people only reveal when they believe no one is watching. The couples who would come to my cabins. They were my art. I would watch them arrive, their faces full of the bright, stupid hope of a perfect vacation. And then, over the days, the masks would slip. The polite smiles would fade. The carefully constructed public personas would crumble, and the real people underneath would emerge. I saw their quiet acts of tenderness. I saw their bitter, whispered arguments. I saw their fears, their passions, their sad, secret infidelities. It was the greatest show on earth, okay? And I had the only ticket. They called me a predator, a blackmailer. So simplistic. I was a scientist, a sociologist. My encrypted files were not a criminal enterprise. They were a library of human truth. And the blackmail, that was simply a tax. A fee for the privilege of seeing people for who they truly were. The weak ones, the ones with the most to hide, they always paid. It was a predictable, satisfying equation. For 10 years, my system was perfect. My collection grew. I was a quiet, invisible god, observing the flawed, fascinating world I had created. And then he came. I remember him clearly, Liam, the quiet, polite Filipino kid with the pretty girlfriend. They were a perfect specimen. Young, in love, full of that artless, unguarded intimacy that was the crown jewel of my collection. I remember watching them on the deck, the girl's head on his shoulder, and thinking how beautiful they were, how perfect their eventual entry into my collection would be. I underestimated him. That was my mistake. I see that now. I saw a quiet, unassuming boy, and I assumed he was simple. I saw a man in love, and I assumed he was blind. I did not see the predator hiding behind the gentle eyes. I, the great observer, had failed to observe the one person who mattered. I have spent the last 6 months in this cell with nothing to do but think, and I think of him constantly. I replay every moment of those 2 days, searching for the clue I missed. His questions had seemed so innocent, his demeanor so relaxed. He had performed the role of the happy, unsuspecting tourist so perfectly. It was a masterful deception, an artist's deception. The police, in their clumsy, brutish way, told me what he had done, how he had hacked my network, how he had seen everything, how he had created the fake rival blackmailer to force their hand. It was a plan of such elegance, such quiet, surgical precision that I could not help but feel a flicker of professional admiration. He had not just beaten me, he had used my own art, my own beautiful, complex system, as the weapon to destroy me. It was a deeply, profoundly intimate violation. He had not just broken into my house, he had broken into my soul. I do not feel remorse for what I did to those people, my other clients. They were sheep, and I was the wolf. That is the way of the world. But for him, for Liam, I feel a deep, burning, and eternal rage. He was not a sheep. He was another wolf, a quieter, more dangerous wolf, and he had entered my forest and stolen my kill. The other inmates here, they talk of revenge. They plot crude, violent acts against the judges and the prosecutors and the witnesses who put them here. I find their fantasies so unimaginative. My revenge, if I could have it, would be different. I would not want to harm him physically. I would want to watch him. I would want to know if he and the girl are still together. I would want to see the small, secret cracks that have formed in their relationship after the trauma I'd put them through. I would want to see the way he now looks over his shoulder, the way he now checks the smoke detectors in every hotel room he ever stays in. I would want to see the ghost of me that I know still lives behind his eyes. That would be my revenge, to know that I had, in my own way, become a permanent part of his collection. But I cannot see him. I can see nothing but these gray walls and the flat, dead light of the frosted window. The guards tell me he has become something of a hero. A cybersecurity expert who now works with law enforcement. A white hat hacker who helps them hunt men, like me. It's a sickeningly ironic twist. The boy who broke into my world now gets praised for it. The only thing they let me keep in my cell is a single photograph. It's a picture of my house in Aspen, the Airy in the fall, the aspen trees, a blaze of gold around it. A picture of my beautiful, perfect, quiet kingdom. I look at it and I imagine him. I imagine him and the girl somewhere beautiful, somewhere private, maybe a beach. Maybe his own ancestral home, a place like the one I now only see in my dreams. He is safe. He is happy. He is free. And he is the one who put me in this cage. It is the final, perfect, and unsolvable puzzle. And it is the only thing I have left to think about here in the silent, watchful dark.